A casual hoodie, a luxury showroom, and one jaw-dropping reveal. What happens when a car dealership manager misjudges the man who secretly owns it all? Derek Williams pulled into the parking lot of Prestige Motors, the flagship dealership he had recently acquired in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. The desert heat shimmered off the sleek luxury vehicles parked out front, their glossy finishes practically glowing in the afternoon sun. He parked his modest SUV in an unmarked spot at the back and stepped out, taking a moment to scan the dealership's facade. He wasn't dressed for attention, quite the opposite. A simple gray hoodie, slightly worn jeans, and sneakers were his uniform for the day. His decision to dress casually was deliberate. He wanted to see the dealership's true colors, to experience how it operated when no one knew the new boss was watching. As he walked toward the entrance, he noticed a small group of employees inside, chatting near the front desk. The faint hum of laughter and casual conversation carried through the glass doors. Derek opened the door and stepped inside. The air-conditioned showroom was a stark contrast to the heat outside, filled with the faint scent of leather and fresh wax. Rows of pristine cars gleamed under the bright overhead lights. The chatter quieted as he walked in. Derek caught the brief glances exchanged between the employees, their eyes flicking to his hoodie and sneakers. He felt the subtle shift in energy, the kind that spoke louder than words. But he wasn't here to make assumptions. He was here to observe. Then, from across the showroom, she appeared, Olivia Clark. Olivia was a middle-aged woman with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. Her tailored blazer and polished heels spoke of authority, and the clipboard tucked under her arm added an air of efficiency. She approached with purpose, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her expression was polite at first glance, but there was a tightness in her smile that didn't escape Derek's notice. "Excuse me," Olivia began, her voice cool and clipped. "Can I help you with something?" Derek smiled, his demeanor calm. "Just here to look around," he said casually, gesturing towards the cars. Olivia's eyes narrowed, scanning him from head to toe. Her polite mask slipped ever so slightly, replaced by something less welcoming. "Are you shopping for a car?" she asked, her tone carrying an edge of doubt. Derek nodded, still smiling. "Something like that." Olivia's lips pursed. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend—" Before she could finish, another employee called out, "Hey Olivia, the delivery guy is here." Her attention wavered for a moment, but her gaze snapped back to Derek, as though ensuring he wouldn't wander too far. Derek raised an eyebrow but kept his tone light. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" The question seemed to catch her off guard, but only briefly. She recovered quickly, her posture stiffening. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied with a forced smile. "These vehicles start at 6 figures. Maybe I can direct you to—" Derek's expression didn't waver, but internally he noted her choice of words. His calm composure was unshaken, but the subtle sting of her assumptions was undeniable. The moment lingered, tension hanging in the air as Olivia stared at him expectantly. Derek glanced around the showroom, pretending to admire one of the nearby cars. It was a sleek silver coupe with an aggressive design. His fingers brushed the door handle and he glanced back at Olivia. "Nice car," he said simply. Her brows furrowed slightly, but she forced another smile. "It is. Perhaps when you're ready to make a serious inquiry, we can set up an appointment. For now," she added, "I'll have to ask you not to touch the vehicles." Derek stood there for a moment, considering her words, before stepping back from the car. He nodded once, hands in his pockets, and gestured for her to continue. "All right, let's hear it. What would you recommend for someone like me?" Olivia blinked, surprised by the directness of his question, but before she could respond, Derek added, "If you think you know what I need, I'm all ears." Her polite facade cracked just enough to reveal the impatience underneath. "Maybe something a little more budget-friendly," she said flatly. Derek smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's quite the assumption," he said softly. The statement hung in the air, and for a brief moment Olivia faltered. Then, regaining her composure, she straightened her shoulders. "I'll be back with a list of options," she said, walking away briskly. Derek watched her go, his expression unreadable. He turned back to the silver coupe, his reflection staring back at him in the glossy finish. This was going to be an interesting day. Derek Williams stood in the center of the showroom, hands in his pockets, his gaze drifting over the lineup of cars. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but Olivia Clark's dismissive attitude was hard to ignore. Around him, the staff had resumed their conversations, though he caught the occasional glance in his direction. It was the kind of scrutiny he'd become accustomed to over the years, the silent judgment, the coded looks. Olivia returned a moment later, her clipboard still gripped tightly in her hands, her gait brisk but forced. She approached him with an air of professionalism that didn't quite mask her irritation. "All right," she said, stopping a few feet away from him. "I've compiled a few options that might be more suitable for your situation." Derek raised an eyebrow, genuinely curious. "My situation?" "Yes," Olivia replied, her tone clipped. She handed him a printout of pre-owned vehicles, each with detailed descriptions and price tags well below the dealership's usual offerings. "These are more practical choices. Reliable, economical, nothing too extravagant." Derek took the list without saying anything, his eyes scanning the options. A used sedan, an older SUV, a compact hybrid. His lips quirked in amusement, but he quickly regained his composure, folding the paper and slipping it into his pocket. "Appreciate the help," he said, his tone even. Olivier seemed momentarily disarmed by his response, but she quickly recovered, her hands resting on her hips. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice slightly as if she were about to share a secret. "We cater to a very specific clientele here. You might not find what you're looking for in our inventory." Derek met her gaze, his expression calm but unyielding. "And what makes you think I'm not your target customer?" Olivia hesitated, but only for a split second. "I've been doing this for years," she said. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." "Out of their depth?" Derek repeated almost thoughtfully. "Interesting." There was a brief, uncomfortable silence between them. Olivia couldn't read him, and it was starting to get under her skin. She continued, this time with less warmth in her voice. "I'm just being honest. It's better to be upfront about these things than have someone leave disappointed." Derek's eyes glinted with a hint of amusement. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Honesty? Well, I do appreciate that. But let me ask you something." He took a deliberate step forward, his tone shifting, more assertive now. "You let me speak to the owner. Think we can make that happen?" Olivia's eyebrows shot up, caught off guard by the directness of his request. "The owner?" she asked, her voice now edged with confusion. "That's right," Derek said, his tone light, almost conversational. "I'd like to have a word with him." Olivia's lips twitched in a poor attempt at a smile. "Well, that's not possible today," she said quickly, her tone shifting into something more defensive. "The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're a very busy person." "I'm sure they are," Derek said, nodding slightly. "But maybe you could call them and let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Olivia's smile tightened, her patience wearing thin, and it showed. "Look, sir, I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting out of hand," she said, her tone sharp. "I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with one of our consultants. Otherwise—" "Otherwise what?" Derek asked, his voice still calm, though there was an unmistakable edge to his voice now. Olivia's eyes narrowed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to leave." The room fell silent for a moment. Derek stood still, his eyes locked on hers. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, Derek reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, scrolling through his contacts. "I'll make the call myself." Olivia blinked, her brow furrowing. "What are you doing?" "Oh, just calling the owner," Derek replied, lifting the phone to his ear. "Shouldn't take long." Olivia's confidence faltered, her irritation giving way to confusion. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Around them, a few employees had stopped what they were doing, their attention drawn to the unfolding scene. Derek raised a finger, signaling for them to wait, and turned slightly away to make the call. "Yeah, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine, just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call, slipping the phone back into his pocket. Turning back to Olivia, he simply said, "They'll be here shortly." Olivia stared at him, her mouth slightly open. Who did you just call?" Derek didn't answer immediately. He glanced around the showroom, his eyes lingering on the staff who were now watching intently. "Guess we'll find out," he said, his tone almost playful. The tension in the room was palpable, and it seemed to grow heavier by the second. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling to maintain her composure. The employees around them were on edge as well, unsure of how the situation would unfold. Derek stood there, casually leaning against one of the luxury SUVs, his demeanor calm, but everyone else in the showroom felt the weight of the situation. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know—" "You didn't know what?" Derek Williams asked, his tone still gentle but firm. "That I could own a place like this, that someone like me might actually belong here?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment she seemed utterly lost. "I didn't mean—" she faltered, unsure of what to say. Derek held up his hand, cutting her off. "It's fine, Olivia, really." He took a step closer, his voice dropping just enough to make everyone lean in. "But let me ask you something." His gaze didn't waver as he addressed her directly, his words laced with an unspoken challenge. "If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me any differently? Would you have given me the same respect you'd give someone who walked in here wearing a suit and tie?" Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence in the room was deafening. Derek nodded as though her silence was answer enough. He turned to Alex, his voice carrying a new authority. "Let's gather everyone in the conference room," Derek said. "I think it's time we had a little chat about how things are run around here." The employees filed into the sleek conference room, the air thick with tension. The room, designed to impress, was all glass walls and modern furnishings, but today it felt stifling. Olivia sat near the back, her usual confident demeanor replaced with a nervous stillness. Derek stood at the head of the table, calm and collected, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Alex remained near the door, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he watched the staff take their seats. The quiet murmur of whispers died down as Derek cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the group. "Thank you all for joining me on short notice," Derek began, his tone measured but firm. "For those of you who don't know, my name is Derek Williams, and as of last month, I'm the new owner of Prestige Motors." There were murmurs of surprise from a few employees, their reactions ranging from curiosity to embarrassment. Olivier sank lower in her chair, avoiding eye contact. "I came here today dressed casually for a reason," Derek continued, his voice steady. "I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to experience what a potential customer might feel walking through these doors." He let the words settle for a moment before continuing. "What I experienced today was disappointing. I was judged, not for what I could bring to the table, but for how I looked. And I'm not here to single anyone out, but we need to talk about what that says about the culture of this dealership." Olivia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face flushed. Derek's eyes briefly flicked to her before moving back to the group as a whole. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about every person who walks through those doors, every customer who doesn't fit into someone's preconceived notion of what a luxury car buyer looks like." One of the younger sales associates raised his hand hesitantly. Derek nodded toward him. "Go ahead," Derek said. The man began nervously. "I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions." Derek nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I get that," he said. "We all have biases, whether we want to admit it or not. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just try to be fair. We have to actively challenge those biases." Derek's tone remained steady and authoritative, but his words carried a weight that pressed on everyone present. His confidence was clear, and the silence that followed seemed to heighten the importance of what he was saying. "We have to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of their appearance, background, or anything else." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "This dealership has built a reputation for excellence, but excellence isn't just about the cars we sell, it's about the experience we provide. And from now on, that experience is going to be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness." There was a ripple of agreement around the room, though a few faces remained wary. Derek's gaze settled on Olivia, who sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Olivia," he said gently but firmly, "I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say?" All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. I made a mistake," she admitted, her cheeks flushed. "I misjudged you, and for that, I'm truly sorry." Derek nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for saying that," he said. "I hope this experience will serve as a reminder for all of us. Not just you, but everyone. Because change starts with accountability." He turned back to the group. "Moving forward, we'll be implementing new training programs to ensure this dealership represents the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, no exceptions. If anyone has an issue with that, now's the time to speak up." The room was silent. The silence in the conference room was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke, but the weight of Derek's words lingered, pressing on everyone present. Derek let the quiet stretch just long enough to make his point. "Good," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "I'm glad to see we're all on the same page. Change isn't always easy, but it's necessary. And this dealership is going to lead by example." He took a step away from the table, his hands resting lightly on its edge as he leaned forward slightly. "Let me make something clear. I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. I came to understand what kind of culture I've inherited and how we can make it better." His eyes moved to Olivia, who still sat quietly near the back. "Olivia," he said, his tone softening just enough to make it clear he wasn't attacking her. "You're an experienced manager, and I'm sure you've worked hard to get where you are. But today was a wake-up call for you, and for all of us." Olivia looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. "I understand," she said, her voice shaky but sincere. "I was wrong, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Derek nodded. "I believe in second chances," he said simply. "But accountability comes first. I'll be meeting with you one-on-one to discuss next steps. For now," he continued, turning his attention back to the rest of the team, "let's focus on moving forward. We're not just selling cars here. We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way." There was a murmur of agreement, this time louder and more genuine. The staff seemed to relax, the initial tension giving way to a sense of renewed purpose. Even Alex, who had been standing quietly by the door, nodded in approval.